NASCAR fans know the name Rex White, but from 1959 to 1962, he won just as many races as both Hall of Famer Lee Petty or Ned Jarrett. He stood only 5 foot 4 inches tall. Rex was one of the smallest drivers to ever climb behind the wheel, but he is truly one of the biggest pioneers in the sport. Matt Yoakum has his story.
Very few men still survive from the days when NASCAR races took place on the beaches of Daytona or on the tiny dirt tracks carved out of a farmer's field. Rex White remembers those days, and at 81 years old, he is NASCAR's oldest living champion. Your first car, did it have any kind of lap belt, or you just got in there and there was no seat up
here? The very first race car I drove, no lap belt at all. Had a chain.
A chain?
A chain.
White grew up in rural North Carolina during the Great Depression. Farm work was hard, especially for the kid self-described as the runt of the family.
I started falling down when I was about 9 years old. We were walking in a plowed field or something, and my leg would just go out from under me, and I'd fall down. And then I got so bad that I'd be going down steps and I'd fall. Well, my dad thought I was trying to get out of work and things like that, and so they finally took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, you got infantile paralysis. And in those days, that's what it was called instead of polio.
White had been driving cars around the farm since the age of 6, and he knew all about the locals with souped-up cars for hauling moonshine. In 1950, he moved to Maryland to find work, just 2 years after the formation of NASCAR.
My first race was Lanham Speedway in West Lanham, Maryland. And the first car that I ever seen come out and go around the racetrack, I told my wife that's what I want to do. So I kept trying to get in the pits and figure a way. So I took a board off. Brought me a hammer and took the board off, the one that was wide enough that I could get through. And I hung around Frankie Schneider because I liked the color of his car. And his mechanic that was traveling with him got drafted in the Army. And he said, "You want to go racing?" And I said, "I would like to." And he said, "Don't pay nothing, but I'll buy you something to eat."
When Rex started out, he was basically an underdog racer with a junkyard car. Was it tough financially to survive during your era?
It was tough. I went to a racetrack where I didn't have enough money to pay to buy your pit pass. And Mary Bruner would say, "Well, you can pay me after the race." Wind up at the racetrack totally broke. If you didn't take in some money, you didn't have a way to get home.
White won 7 races between 1958 and 59, but NASCAR pioneer Lee Petty captured the championships. But despite his size, Rex was never one to be intimidated, and once shoved the 3-time champion into the guardrail after Petty was blocking him for the win.
Well, I'd followed him all night, and finally I said, "I'm going to pass him one way or the other." And after the race was over, there was a discussion. And he didn't say he was going to punch me in the mouth or something like that because of the little guy. He said, "I'll turn you over and knee and spank you." And I didn't necessarily mean to take anybody out of the race, but you want to get by. It's still that way.
White won 6 more races in 1960 and captured the title. It was a $70,000 payday, but he was still almost broke.
I didn't think much about the championship like they would today because it wasn't a big hype, It was all about winning races and survival. But it's hard to have money left over with the cost of racing and all.
In the early 60s, most NASCAR races were still run on small dirt tracks. There were only 4 speedways at Darlington, Daytona, Charlotte, and Atlanta, the biggest victory of White's career. Speedway wins garnered a lot of money and bragging rights for the car makers.
Oh, it was fierce. Fierce. Yeah, each one wanted to get ahead of the other in design and horsepower and stuff like that. You could talk about a guy's wife, but you couldn't talk about his car. I mean, he would fight you over his car more so than he would his wife.
Rex retired 4 years after his championship season. Today, he still enjoys talking with NASCAR fans, hoping to help them appreciate the sacrifices of NASCAR's early pioneers.
I think that you definitely have to have passion. when you're not sure whether you're going to eat, you continue on that path for your income, you gotta like it. I bet you they wouldn't realize what everybody went through to bring it to where it is today.
And hearing stories like that is really what it's all about. And he makes the good point about educating current drivers about the history. It's so important, isn't it, Kyle?
Yeah, it is. And that's what these pieces are about. That's what TNT and Turner has done. They've taken these pieces, and it's to educate the fans. If you look back at the people that are in the Hall of Fame that we've done specials on, Rex White was a phenomenal guy, just a great guy. You saw him sitting there between David Pearson and Richard Petty, two guys that are already in the Hall of Fame. And you look at what his statistics were and look at what he did. And as he said, we raced to put food on the table. You know what I mean? Hey, I didn't think much about the championship. I just had to go race again.
And Rex Wright is one of only 6 true driver owners to win the Sprint Cup Series championship. And what I loved about Rex White, there wasn't anything about that race car that he couldn't work on, build, or repair. Engine, body, chassis, it didn't matter.
He could do it all himself. Certainly very impressive. Well, we will be back from Sonoma County, where there are more than 48,000